So we'll get our screen shared and just make sure that everybody can see. And can everyone hear us okay? Like if there's an issue with that, just put it in the chat and Farron will let us know. So again, yes, we'll just go ahead and tell you a little bit about us. So my name is Suzanne Dupuy. I'm the Director of Player Engagement. I've been here with UL football. This is going to be my third spring. Prior to that, I do have a public education background. I spent 22 years working in a local high school. I was a math teacher. I was their instructional coach. I was a member of their administrative team. Along that way, probably about the last 8 to 10 years, outside of school, I also worked with our athletes on Division I eligibility and recruiting. I worked with our area coaches, high school, and that kind of afforded me the opportunity to kind of get into this world and even realize that a job like this existed, coming from, being a high school math teacher. So I was able to start here, and then I had the opportunity when I first started. Miranda was still a student, and so she and I kind of connected in that way, and I'll let her tell you her story after that.
Yeah, so I've got a bit of an interesting path to get here as well. I was a student recruiting assistant in undergrad when I was a student here. Towards the end of my senior year was kind of also when the recruiting season went dead. So February, March, I wanted a job, so I didn't want to leave the building. Right around that same time, also, we had a sudden staffing change in the building. So I kind of just jumped over and started helping with academics, just really in any way I could. At that point, it kind of just looked like scheduling classes and helping with like course calendars, some content tutoring, stuff like that. And then I did end up getting hired for football. And then about a year after that, transitioned into academics. So been in my academic position for about a year now.
Yeah. And we do understand that our setup is probably a little different than most, with me being more so on the athletic side and Miranda being in academics now. When she made the transition over, we realized very soon that we had to kind of figure out, and as our department was expanding, who was going to do what and be responsible for what, so that we could balance out how making sure our student athletes were the most successful they could be. We came a long way in figuring out that there's some reports and things that we're able to get from campus that make our day-to-day jobs a heck of a lot easier. So part of the goal for today is to kind of help you figure out how to work smarter, not harder. Take away something from here that just could maybe make what you already do day to day a little bit more efficient or easier. And then for us, it was trying to figure out to streamline the communication between our academic staff and our coaching staff. As you all know, like their plates are very full. So having me in the building with them was able to help us streamline what we needed to do and what I could kind of digest and break down before we turned around and gave it to full staff. So that's one of the things that we're going to kind of talk about today. So this is what our current structure looks like. So on the academic side, we do have 2 academic advisors. Miranda handles defense and Rochelle handles offense and specialists for us. We have Miss Ayana, who is our learning specialist. And then on the athletic side, it's me. So the things that we kind of share in the middle, we do a lot talking about progress towards degree, their degree path, the same structures many people have: mentoring, study hall, tutoring. We do grade tracking a little differently than most, probably a little extra, if you will. And we figured out we had to identify a way to deal with injuries and absences. A lot happens in a season and out of a season that could impact academics. So those are the things that we're going to show you in a second that we've kind of divvied up and figured out how to best utilize our resources.
And then kind of outside of our designated football staffs, we also have the director of our offices, Miss Christie. We ask a lot of her sometimes to step in, especially for like, I guess, your bigger task, quote unquote, when we've got to do NCAA appeals, anytime we need to like get in contact with a dean of students, stuff like that. That's where she kind of steps in as well.
Yeah. And because Miranda and I kind of were 2 peas in a pod at first, we just sort of overlapped each other and we were around each other day to day, that when we divided up and she went to academics and our departments started to expand, we took those areas, and this may be a piece that is useful to you. So if you remember, the first column is always going to be me, and that's going to be the athletic side of things. And then the rest is going to be how our academic staff handles different sides of the ball and just different pieces of the puzzle. Our learning specialist, you want to kind of touch on what Miss Ayana does for us?
Yeah, so again, myself and Rochelle, we pretty much have the exact same responsibilities, just that I handle it for defense, she handles it for offense. Ayana is our learning specialist. She handles some of our, our more at-risk students, eligibility wise, students that come in with any sort of academic plan, IEP, anything like that. And then she also helps us, she is our main communicator for the Office of Disability Services. So whether that is students for academic plans, or it's like after a surgery, a physical disability, getting classes moved to lower levels, getting elevator access, anything like that, that's also where she steps in. With those at-risk students or students with plans that we've identified, and we'll talk more about that later, she meets typically with them twice a week, just as a little more intense meeting time.
And you'll notice just scanning like the column for me, a lot of what I do is a big support role and an encouragement role in terms of sending the extra text, sending the reminders, touching base with the position coach. On the next piece, like I get the full grade report, and we'll talk in a bit about how we digest that and then turn around and present that to staff on our end. We kind of all communicate equally, and everybody has a say in the next action plans that we do. So that has come a long way. This is our first semester having the full academic staff with myself. So we had to learn how to not step on each other's toes, and to also be able to talk within each other's voice, I guess you would say, to where everybody gets heard. So that's been a really good work in progress for us this semester. So that's one piece of our structure. And within each of those components, we had to figure out a way to best use the information that we had. And that's where former math teacher and school administrator, a lot of what we did in high schools was all data driven. It kind of allows you to make decisions that they're people driven, but not personal. So what we've done is come up with a way to track a PTD for all of our kids, to determine which guys need the most support in which area. And to do that, we wanted to come up with a baseline system that, again, was equitable across the board. We identified some tracking points that we wanted to use, and then how we were going to best use the resources we had. One of the big things we do is at the start of every semester, we develop a hot list. So it's generally guys that have an eligibility need, that we've noticed over prior semesters have a pattern of certain academic hiccups or behaviors. And that just gets us going into the semester with a group of guys that we're already watching. And most recently, we've come up with a support study hall that complements the study hall structure we will talk about in just a minute. But all of these things that we use day to day are all based on some piece or points of data that we identify along the way. So we ask you to use what you have. The files that we use most common is our certification file, the class schedule file, and oddly enough, just the finals week schedule that comes from the university itself. We take these different tools and we adapt them into ways that we can work together, and that we can then support and give our athletes some more accountability. So we'll start here with the certification file. Now, when I first started here, you have to remember that everything I knew was eligibility moving from high school to college. And in January, we had a big staff turnover here in the building. Our athletic staff was all pretty new. I arrived to 140 kids that I didn't know, aside from a roster photo. And it was very quickly, we realized that I had to figure out, like, what is the problem? Where do we stand? What do they need to know? What do I need to know? So the piece of information I got was the certification file. You can see across the bottom that this is something we update every single semester. As a bit of an Excel nerd or Google Sheets, I do love to have it trigger codes. So we set and establish certain guidelines that conditional formatting. So once you put the data in, the Excel sheet kind of does the work for you. This column here, the position group column, is one that we have added to every document we use. And it's because we can then filter everything by position and have the position coach an individual document that they can use. So from the certification file, we pulled the degree applicable hours, the semester prior GPA, their PTD from that semester, and then their adjusted GPA. The first time I was here, I was handed different pieces of eligibility, continuing eligibility, and there are rules, there are PTD marks, there are semester triggers. So I went in and now every semester we update, like, so for now at the end of spring, this is the semester where our guys will be. That then triggers this PTD mark. Once we have those two pieces, we then go and look at the rules. You know, for competition, everybody has a 6-hour rule. Football, we worry about the 18-hour rule. So fall plus spring. Then I go down and the two of us will work, and now it'll be the more of us. We'll figure out where they were come the fall and what is their need as far as a rule. We do the same thing. If their PTD mark is a 72, they're 63, boom, we now know that they're needing 9 hours. So these two final columns are the ones that were the first trigger for us for support. It's arbitrary. You can decide yours. My first semester here, I thought that needing 12 hours to be eligible sounded like a lot. So that became the trigger, and it stayed the trigger. So anybody who needs 12 or more hours to be eligible gets turned red. So that's an easy way to spot, see, and then filter. And the same for GPA. It's set to trigger who's below their GPA mark. And you also know we've the greens, a big push for us has been increasing the number of guys that ideally have a 3.0 or higher GPA, either in a semester or overall. So that's another piece that we track. Now, the first time you do this file, it can seem a little daunting, especially if someone's less familiar, like kind of like myself, with the eligibility rules. But moving semester to a semester, we really just copy the current file, rename it, take out the old guys, put in the new, and the conditional formatting rules still exist in the document. So once you set it up the first semester, then moving forward, it's a really much easier process, and it's a great tool. So we had this data file in a couple of springs ago, and our goal then became, how do we teach the guys? So, nerd that I am, this is a Word document that has markers. So where it says 12 credits here or 2.5, so it's a placeholder. It's kind of the same way you get Excel to make you address labels. It's a mail merge. So we created this file that we could then drop in every guy's eligibility, and then we could teach them or find out what they knew about eligibility rules. So I met with the whole team that first semester, and we literally sat here with a marker or a highlighter, and we colored in which semester they were on. And then we came down to the box and we found out, do you know what your eligibility is? Do you know where you are? A big piece of this was also to help me develop a relationship with each one of them, because I knew that there was going to be a lot different in the building for them, including myself. And the best way to get them to trust me is to know me, and vice versa. So I started asking just some generic questions. It turned out for them, this first semester, this was the only time we used this big file in this capacity. We've kind of since modified it. Every semester, they are still given their status in terms of, are you in good standing? Are you not in good standing? What hours do you need? What GPA do you need? And we even go so far as to give them grade targets. Miranda and I worked with a gentleman at the registrar's office. He kind of helped us understand how adjusted GPA is calculated. Again, we made one file that calculated one kid's adjusted GPA. We copy it. We drop in every other athlete's classes from their transcript. So we start this semester knowing what grades they need to be eligible by the end of that semester. And all of those pieces are given to the kids because we really want them to be accountable for a lot of it. And we want them to have some ownership. So then everything we do moving forward that semester addresses how many hours do you need? What are your GPA targets? And that's helpful for on my end of it.
The first time we handed this out as well, you can kind of see it in that underneath the first set of big blocks where it says use your progress towards degree. So although we only have, we have to graduate our guys after 10 semesters, we did kind of want to shift in order to just increase like the number of hours we were passing and stuff. We kind of shifted over to the goal now is to pass 15 every spring, 12 every fall. That's why we're in season. So that they can graduate at the end of that 9th semester, so that when eligibility is up and their time on the team is up, it's coinciding with when they're done. Kind of just like looking back at the data, we found that our guys who have to stay until May, we don't have a super high success rate with those guys graduating just because there's no like really accountability on the football side anymore for them or on the athletic side for them anymore. So kind of changing it, getting away from that 12-hour minimum or the 6-hour minimum mindset every semester has really helped us as well.
Yeah. So this shows the first way we use the certification file purely as an eligibility tool and to kind of help the guys, even the higher achieving guys, they want to know, like, when can I be done? How can I move my 3.0 GPA to a 3 whatever? So it's not just your lower level ones that enjoy the information and take advantage of it. So that was a good thing for us to come across and learn. Now, like we talked earlier, the second way we use the certification file is we wanted to kind of figure out what markers were important to us to identify the support needs. So we took the same pieces, the semester prior GPA and the adjusted GPA. And the ones that we added in were, have you been on a hot list for us before? Have you had a mentor prior to this semester? How many online courses are you taking in that current semester? So this was our support need for fall. We taught it again to trigger that if you have 3 or more online classes, then that is a trigger yes for us. If you had been on the hot list, that's a yes for us. And if your GPA at the time was below a 2.5, that was a trigger for us to decide that you need study hall. Then the study hall yeses, you can see that we do put a lot of guys in study hall. Miranda's gonna touch on how we navigate that in just a minute. And then the mentors, we have a limited number of mentor staff available. So one thing we decided that was important to us was, and partially that was already in place when I got here, was everybody who's new to the athletic program gets a mentor. So hence the newbies, they get a mentor. And then if you have multiple triggers, being that you're an eligibility need for us, or your GPA is kind of low, or you just had a mentor in the past, we would always try to fit you in with a mentor there. Miranda's going to touch on how we do study hall, because like I said, we end up putting a lot of guys into study hall each semester, and we had to figure out the best way to get the most from them.
Yeah, so starting off the semester, we had a little shy of 90 guys assigned to study hall. Some of them it's like Suzanne said, it's just because they're new, they're in their first year here. So we just immediately assign them. It becomes very apparent very quickly who really doesn't need the designated time, that they'll just find time to come in. But they don't necessarily need like an assigned time to come or a designated hour or anything like that. Something that's a little different that we do here is that we don't do hours per week of study hall. We do an objective-based study hall, so it's kind of just come in and get your work done, and then you don't have to come back. The way we monitor that is a little more involved on our end. We've got a very simple just folder system. They've all got folders in either myself or Rochelle or Ayana's office. And they come in, they grab their folder, they fill out what they need to do for the week. And then once that stuff is done, they don't have to come back. Some of the ones that are a little more higher needs or have histories of bad academic habits, you know, it's a little more involved. Like, okay, you say you did this, but can you show me that you did this? If they say they've done something, but we maybe feel like they haven't, we'll text Suzanne to try to catch them. So something that's a little different about our setup here is that our offices aren't located in the athletic facility. We're on main campus, and then our athletic facility is separate. So sometimes while they can dodge me on main campus, they can't dodge Suzanne. So again, just another aspect of communication, but that's kind of how we do it.
Yeah. So again, some weird ways to use your certification file that could be beneficial to you that we may take away. The next file that we use, oddly enough, is our schedule file. Just a precursor. So here we have one communication system that is used by our athletic program to communicate messages or post their lift schedule or football meetings. And then we had a secondary system that was used by campus that housed their schedule, any sort of academic meetings or study hall check-in and check-out. So when things were just getting started here, there was a lot of overlap confusion with maybe training room schedules or trying to figure out lift. So we took the schedule file, and you can see we kind of added in some things here. Now, I will tell you, don't do this until after your drop add date. The initial drop add date is clear. Like, you want to start with a schedule file that is accurate as possible. So then I would go in and I would insert when the guys had lift. I would plop in when they had study hall and when they had the mentor. So everyone in our building on the athletic side had access to this file along with the academic staff. The goal here was, again, that communication piece within our building. So our athletic training staff had access to this. They could schedule rehab. They could schedule doctor's appointments. Our head coach is a big advocate of academics. So he was adamant that, like, you don't take over study hall. You don't take over mentor time. And so this was an easier way for us to say, if a kid called and wanted to change his lift, then the lift staff could log in and say, no, you've got class. No, you've got this other academic appointment. A positive for us is, I think we might be in our last semester that we have to do this file ourselves because we are going to start using the same system for football communications and academic communications. But if you do in your program have two different communication systems, making one combined file that details everything. And again, our favorite friend is the position group. We would print these out by position and hand them to the coaches, the position coach. They themselves make use of when they want to call guys in. Filters are your friends in Excel. So sometimes, like, we had a weather day the other day here and had a late start, and they wanted to shift position groups, or they want to shift lift. So we would sort it and be able to say quickly, like, who would have a conflict if we take meetings and start from 3 o'clock to 2 o'clock. There's a lot of times in season, I just keep a separate file of who has a 2 o'clock class, who has a class that ends after 3. And then if anything changes in their schedule and we need to be able to not get them in trouble on the football end, I'll just drop it in the group chat that we have and say, hey, reminder, these guys will be running late to meetings because they're in class. So I would encourage you to get a hold of your schedule file if you're on the athletic side and the academic side, just because of the things you can do with it throughout the semester. If you're asked for a given piece of information, it's very useful. The other thing we do with it is we decide after the first semester, we had some surprises at the end of spring. We are allowed backdoor access to our student information system. Here it's Moodle. So we can see guides' grades. Sometimes there's not always a lot to see depending on when professors are posting, or sometimes their grades are posted in a different system, but it's a huge tool for us. And we do send out progress reports, and those are great. We get those back from the professors. But we realized that if our guys didn't realize we were checking every week, that if a semester got busy, if season hit a lull, they might let things slide. And it was faster for us to catch up week to week than to wait a couple of weeks or 3 weeks and then have to come from behind. So we took the schedule file. The only column we inserted was their eligibility concern. Because again, we will print this by position coach every Friday. That's when we do our academic update to our full athletic staff. The coach can then see what my guy needs and see what grades are available. And you'll note, like at some points in this semester, there weren't any grades and we just roll with it. We taught the file to go ahead and turn red any cell that is a failing grade. And then if we spot something in Moodle that is either alarming or a positive, we'll drop it in the notes column because, as Miranda will tell you later, we love a good win. Our grade checks happen. And for us, there are some pretty standard responses. It could be an attendance, it could be missed assignments, failed exams. It got a little monotonous typing that over and over. So we taught this file here to have a drop-down menu that would allow us to just check off whatever response. We put reported by teacher because we do have a lot of times that the teacher will send us positives, meaning they'll tell us that their kids aren't at risk and they have a good grade, they're doing a great job. So we just kind of loaded in, again, less on our end week to week typing, more so just clicking, and then being able to have the triggers for failing grades. I'll let Miranda touch on why that's important to us.
Yeah, so we started using the failing grades. We kind of touched on earlier our support study hall system. So on top of the regular study hall that we do just during the day, during the week, any student that during the week pulls as having multiple failing grades, or we just notice is falling behind, maybe they aren't failing, but they're on their way to failing, missing multiple assignments, maybe even a student that missed class for other reasons and is just behind, we assign them to a support study hall. So in the spring, that it's a little different than it was in season. We started off doing it on Tuesdays and Thursdays just because that's what aligned with our schedule. Once we started spring practice, we switched it over to Mondays and Wednesdays. It's in the afternoons. It's just a designated time for them to come back to the office when it's a little quieter. It's a little bit more focused just on them. They know what they have to do, what they need to work on, because it's designated just to those classes that they're either failing or behind in. That's something that we alert staff about in our Friday meetings. So they're always notified who will be participating in the support study hall the following week. And that's been beneficial for us.
A little bit of an Excel tip from when you're printing. So we give our coaches every week the prior week and the current. So as the semester goes on and this file starts to grow, we actually hide the weeks that we're done with. So that way, from the student name to the schedule file, you'll see the week prior and then the current week's grade. So they'll get 2 weeks of that at a time. We also separate offense and defense just based on our structure in the academic staff. And you can kind of see down here. So we have the initial hot list, which is where we start at the beginning of the semester. And it always becomes a little different as guys either join it or work their way off of it. So everything we generally do that has to do with grades, we keep in this same Excel sheet or Google sheet for the whole semester. So that's kind of a good thing. And then we have one more way that we use the schedule file. On my end, I'm responsible for assigning and the class checks and putting our athletic staff out there. So we will take the schedule file. If you look first at this skinny piece over here, again, because it's Excel, you can sort it. So we sort by subject, course number, and section number. This gives us a list of common classes. So really quickly, we can identify where the bulk of our guys are. Most times, if we have 6 or more guys in a class, we will pull that syllabus, and I'll show you what we do with that on the next slide. But for guys that are also in online classes, or like Miranda pointed out earlier, large lecture settings, they kind of like to know if they have a buddy in the class, or it helps us to make study groups or tutoring sessions. So the first thing we do with it is make the common course file. Then back on my end, I take it and I just make a lot of copies of the same schedule file because I don't want to filter it too much. And so from here, you can go in, you can't see our gentlemen's names, but you can kind of see over here, there's some red peeking out. Before we do any kind of sorting, I turn all of the names of the athletes that are either on the hot list or that have a little bit of a history for maybe forgetting to go to class. We turn them a nice red shade. So then when we sort it, we sort first by day of the week, class start time, building, and room. If you sort it that way, it will give you this sheet that then allows you to assign our athletic staff who go to class check. Anywhere there is a red gets checked because that's an issue for us. We do take some of our guys that are high achievers that don't have an issue with any sort of academics. We will delete them from this file just because we don't have a ton of guys that can help us with class checks. So we want to, again, prioritize what we do. This class check file, as you can see, sometimes we have some staff turnover. So it's kind of a fluid thing. We work with it through the semester and we just make sure that where we need somebody checking, that is occurring. This common course file, I mentioned earlier, we'll pull the syllabi from every class. We were caught a couple of times. Our online classes don't always stop with work being due over a school break. I remember my first semester here, spring break happened. We had a very hot guy that was a big eligibility issue. And when we came back from break, he had missed a ton of work that had happened over the break. And I didn't realize, and he sure as heck didn't look. So we started this common course calendar. It's literally just an Excel sheet. I make the whole semester at a time. I take a syllabus. I load everything, or a course calendar, whatever one comes from the class. We load everything in, and then I'll make a group text message. So it'll say like org 300 spring 24. And the day before, this is always open on my computer. So on a Wednesday, if something's due, you're going to get a text reminder from me on Monday, and you're going to get a text reminder from me from Wednesday. Again, like Miranda said, some of the guys have to show us that they did it. And then as the weeks go on, we hide what's happened. But this has helped, honestly, our guys' ownership of what is due. I'm sometimes famous for not texting at the same time every Sunday. And most times, if by 2 o'clock they haven't heard from me, they are texting in the group text for their class. Hey, Miss D, don't forget we have XYD due today. And that, again, has taken multiple semesters of accountability on their part, but it's kind of a big win for us. This calendar doesn't take a ton of time. The worst part is getting the syllabus, like getting the guys to print it for me and then sitting and typing, but I can usually do it in an afternoon or an evening. So yeah, that's my part of this.
And then I have this file open quite a lot, not probably nearly as often as Suze does, because I don't do I'm not in the text messages. However, a lot of my guys that I see for study hall and that we meet with in the support study hall are in classes that are listed on this tracker. So a lot of times when we're going back and checking their calendars, just making sure they've gotten everything actually written down for the week, we'll reference this. If, again, the accountability aspect of it, they say on Tuesday that they're done with everything, we'll pull up the calendar and say, are you sure? So while I'm not as involved in the texting, this is a file that I live in quite often.
Yeah. And then the last way that we use the schedule file is for finals week. On the athletic side, we make sure that the guys are up and going for all of their in-person exams. I had no idea how to even make that happen my first semester here. So we took the schedule file and then we just took the university schedule. I would suggest that you make a brand new schedule file after your last date to withdraw, like whatever your W date is. That way you can go in, you can delete any A-term classes, you can delete off any classes that the guys drop. And so you just have a really clean file, but again, keep the position group. I'll go in, and if our university says, and I have deleted it, but normally the day of the week and the start time for the class is here. I'll sort it out by whatever the matching Friday, December 8th exam is. So if they say a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class at 9 a.m., I'll make it to where it's only showing the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 a.m. classes. I'll drop in when they're, I'll drop in when their, sorry about that, exam is and what time. And then I'll go in and put Moodle. So for us, that means that's an online class. We'll print it by position group. About a week and a half before finals, I'll go sit with each position coach, ask if they want to verify their guy's exam or if they want to assign it to a GA or QC. I'll hand them the document. I'll tell them that, hey, you just bring your student athletes in one at a time, have them log into their Moodle, make sure that what they see is what we see. The biggest piece we want from those meetings is if they have an online class, what is due during finals week and when is it due? The position people will bring it back to me. I'll take whatever they've corrected or entered and I'll put it back in the master file. And then we turn it into, you kind of see at the bottom, an everyday file. So this would be like a Tuesday from last fall. We first make an in-person exam sheet. So this would be all of our guys that had an 8 a.m. exam on Tuesday. They know that they're going to get a text from me. Usually I give them about 6:30, 6:45. They'll have 15 minutes to text me back to let me know that they're up. If I don't hear from them, then it goes into we call it our perimeter group, which is all of our support staff. And then that particular GA or QC is responsible for making sure the guy is up, phone call, FaceTime. We get all of those guys into class and in time for their exams. I will give them the day before, I'll text them and say, hey, this is your last chance. Make sure you have an 8 a.m. exam. If you don't, because I'm waking you up if you're on the list. So again, an accountability for them. Have we woken up some guys that didn't need to be waking up? Yes. Is it our fault? No. They had time to get out of it. So they got a little early wake up call that day. The other half on Tuesday would be anything that's due for an online class. And at that point, I work with academics and we kind of divvy up, reminding them that it's due. And again, can you let us know when you've turned it in, or can you send me a screenshot that shows you've submitted it? And that has been a big help for us. Our guys like to leave town as soon as possible when all of their in-person and online work is done, but they have to show it. Like they have to prove it to us that it's done. Otherwise, we won't give their position coach the okay that they're able to leave. So that's really like, those are the files that we have taken from campus and kind of used in a different way so that our academic staff and our athletic staff can share some responsibilities in that. So hope that was helpful to you in that piece. Our third piece that we have to deal a lot with is just the communication structure. Because we're separate physically in different buildings, we do meet twice a week. There's a day that I'll go to academics, then the other day they'll come here to me. And so the four of us will sit together. One of the days we look at all the mentor notes. So Ayana is our learning specialist. She will kind of go through the mentor notes, pull out anything that I need to know about or that we need to know about. And we'll go over that one day. The next day we go over the grade check file and kind of talk through what action steps need to happen and who's going to handle that within each guy. And then we develop a report that will show you that we give to our staff because it's important they know why we do things too. And then there's a lot that we talk about in the meetings that just to make sure everybody has a voice to be heard. So MJ's going to tell you that.
Yeah, so as we go through the slides, you'll see kind of like the condensed version of what we'll report to staff on those Friday meeting days. Typically, we do go through student by student with their grade checks or, with their mentor reports. Sometimes it's stuff that's really easy to just be nipped in the bud with maybe a meeting or one afternoon at a support study hall. And that's kind of the stuff. That's why we filter through ourselves and through Suzanne, because it's something that needs to be brought up between academic staff members, but it's not necessarily something that needs to be brought to their coaches. So, you know, we do try to filter so that we don't keep something that's an easy fix from affecting them on the football side of things
Yeah.
as well.
And you'll see at the bottom, our big thing is no surprises. My first semester here, I told you we had some surprises, and that was not great for me. I didn't like that feeling. So now that's kind of evolved into why we check grades every week, why we tell each other everything we can about our athletes, and then why we kind of figure out what staff needs to know, because they're on our side as long as they know. So on Fridays, this is kind of what we show our full athletic staff. Now, we have taken the names off, so it kind of looks generic, but just to kind of walk you through, every week we do grade reports. The position coach will have the copy of their own current grade report. We remind them why their guys are in red. We have a list of guys normally here that has support study hall. This reminds them that we're shifting because of practice, and they have to be signed in by 7. We keep an additional supports chunk in here if we're adding anything new, or we're kind of changing up how we're doing something with the guys. We report that. And then we always have a looking ahead, because again, the more people that know what we're up to and how they can help us with it is key. One thing, while we don't go athlete by athlete in full staff, one thing that we do go over in full staff every week is this is our hot list. So on it are all the guys that have some sort of eligibility concern. Their need is in the middle. And then we give a weekly update. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, there's nothing held back, because we can't get them on our side as a coaching staff if they don't know, and we don't want anybody surprised come fall when, you know, their favorite wide receiver isn't available. Here's where we do one thing that I don't know, it might be a carryover from high school, but every little win, we like all the wins. So on weeks where we have an eligibility guy that is doing perfect, like he's winning for us, because academic wins are as important as athletic wins. And I'm fortunate that we have that set up here in the building. So the wins that we show are great for us, and it's great for a coaching staff, because then they'll go to that guy and also validate the hard work that he's put in, and he likes to know that coach sees him doing their on the field stuff and their off the field stuff equally as well. So we know we've chunked and thrown a lot at you. If we had to say anything about the takeaways from today, is to kind of identify what you've got, either in terms of personnel, where you can figure out who's going to handle which responsibility, if it's in terms of the files that you have. And by all means, start small. The very first file we ever lived in was that eligibility file and the big tracker, our PTD tracker. From there, and a couple of semesters in, we evolved to the schedule file, then the final exam files. So now it's kind of second nature, because I don't know that we would know how to function without a tracker. But initially it was to just figure out a tool that would help us. So if you find that your program has some eligibility issues, or you want to give your guys some more ownership of where they stand, then start with the certification file. If in your building, the problem is the overlap or the, you know, athletic scheduling running into academic scheduling, then maybe start with a master schedule file. Don't try to just jump in and redo everything at once. Like it's overwhelming. And then lastly, make sure you empower your athletes and your staff. The more they know, the more they can help. And there's also going to be fewer resentment on the back end, as long as along the way they understand who's doing what they need to do and who is not. And last, we have to celebrate our wins.
Yeah, just a little bonus. So we've kind of touched on it a little bit throughout the entire thing. A lot of times it can be easy for academics to be the Grim Reaper when it comes to the athletic building. So even as small as putting wins in the grade reports, it's important to acknowledge the guys that are succeeding as well as the guys who need the extra support. So these are just a few of the things we started doing. The certificate of achievements, we give those every semester to students who got 3.0s or higher. The picture that I took right there is actually because that student wanted to send that photo to his mom. He wasn't sure when he'd be able to be home to give it to her, and he wanted her to see it. So they love stuff like that. The next picture on the top right is actually in our locker room, right when you walk in the main doors off the main hallway. So that acknowledges our students who have graduated and who maintained a certain GPA. It changes a little bit every semester because we've only got a certain amount of space. And we want their pictures to be big enough to actually be acknowledged. So it started off as a 2.5, it's up to like a 2.8 now. So hopefully, you know, as we continue to get better, we'll have a 3.0 and higher wall. And then at the bottom is our wall of academic champions. That's actually in our library, in our academic space. That's shared with all of the other sports. So that's not just football, that's every sport on there, with Sunbelt honor roll. So a 3.0 or higher. And then we've got photos for students with 4.0s from the previous semester. So that's another special one. It's in there not only with, you know, their sport athletes, but the other sport athletes. And then we've got recruits and parents and other staff members and stuff that come through there as well. And then even smaller things outside of that, like when we track study hall, like I said, they use their folders, they write on a little calendar. It's very simple. Even just going back in, putting little green check marks, smiley faces, good job stickers, stamps, like anything like that, that even the smallest things, they love it. They just like to know that they're being seen and that they're being appreciated. So
Yeah. I do see that that's the end of us. So I do see that there are some questions in the chat, but I don't know if,
fair. Okay.
okay. We use teamwork and I guess, can they see everything, Farron, if I put the chat up there? Do I need to read it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I didn't want to read aloud.
Sorry,
So-
I did not put that in a group chat. I
Oh,
apologize.
it's okay.
I sent that
Oh,
to
my
you
apologies.
individually.
So we are actually about to switch to retain. We use Teamworks. That's our team system, but then we use grades first. So we're really excited about the switch.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
retain.
Yeah, we'd use grades first and we transitioned over to retain. And I cannot tell you, after the initial hiccups of just getting everything to sync appropriately, you will love this system. It just
Yeah.
saves so much in human capital where you can just invest more time working with your staff and your students directly rather than all the spreadsheets and data tracking. It's a
Yeah.
great system. Highly recommend.
Yeah,
really
we're excited
about it. Yeah, definitely.
So, but we're thrilled that you came. Like I said, I'm a nerd. And so all of these things and just being able to kind of work through it with Miranda and then Rochelle and Ayana, like, it's been fun to have enough people this semester to kind of have the good quality conversations we have week to week. So I'm looking forward to, to what comes next.
Are there any other questions before we head out? But before you guys go, thank you so much to our presenters, Miranda and Suzanne, for your time and amazing information on closing that gap between academics and athletics. I'm sure many academic counselors, advisors, and other roles in athletics have found some useful organizing techniques and skills to close that gap. But before everyone heads out of the room, please complete this session survey evaluation. I will